Do you remember any time you got trouble back in school? I've had a roller coaster of a journey when it comes to my academics, but one major memory that will never leave me about my junior years in school was one time where I got suspended twice in the very painful aftermath. I don't remember exactly when this happened. I must have been 10, I was a kid with a potty mouth. Okay. I was a very polite and well behaved boy in front of adults, but when it came to my friends, I was a little bit different and my vocabulary was different. Not really sure how I got into that. Maybe Limp Biskit or something. I don't know. One day at school, I got into a verbal argument with one of my classmates. Fernando was a huge to me back in the day, and I really let him have it after a few days of emotions sort of like boiling up. See, 1 week of emotions boiling up for a little kid, it's a little much. Things could have elevated to a real fist fight, but he was bigger than me and I was not about to get beaten by this kid. No way. So instead, I let him have it verbally. I wasn't very careful that day and the teacher heard our argument. She chose the right thing and brought us to the principal's office. She laid her case before the judge, and the principal decided to be kind and gave us a 1 day in school suspension. In case none of you know what that is, a 1 day in school suspension is pretty much the same thing as a detention, but it lasts an entire school day. I have to go to my class, then tell my teacher to give me the work for that day, then I go to the library, and I stay there pretty much for an entire day. It's time to leave school now. It seems like the whole situation isn't really affecting me much. Sure, I'm still very upset at Fernando, the kid that kind of got me in trouble for this whole thing, but not enough to kill my spirits. I'm actually feeling okay, and I'm gonna sort of like get a break from my regular classroom and just hang out at the library. That's until I start walking outside of the school, because then I realized that walking towards the exit meant leaving to see my parents, who don't know what just happened. My parents were very strict and would never be okay with my recent behavior. They would probably interrogate me for hours and not let this rest for a long time. To make things worse, my school required for at least one parent to send back a signed copy of the suspension paper. I was doomed. In a matter of seconds from my classroom to the gate of the school, I came up with a master plan. I'm probably still very proud of this plan, actually. We'll see. Every day after school, my parents allowed for me to have a private hour of reading and homework. I knew exactly what my mom and dad's signature looked like. My plan was simple. I'm going to find a document with my dad's signature, use it as a base, and forge my dad's signature. His was the easiest to copy, I think. I can't let them see the suspension, and since it takes place in school, they would never know. I found a little notebook that my dad used as a journal, and I noticed that some of the pages had his signature a bunch of times. He was probably practicing or something. I practiced myself a bunch of times, and right after that, without thinking very much, I copied my dad's signature into the suspension form. My knees were shaking as I was delivering the suspension form to my teachers. Thankfully, the number of other suspended students was high that day, and the teachers barely saw any of the signatures. The day goes very quickly, and I'm incredibly happy. I had a blast. I didn't get caught, and I'm off the hook with my parents. I'm done. So did I learn my lesson? Meh, not exactly. I don't have much recollection of timing here, but I believe it was about 6 months later when I was back at the principal's office for the same reason I got 1 day suspension in the first place. Can you tell I'm not really good at not getting caught? Can you tell I'm not really good at being a good kid? This time I was really screwed. I get suspended for 2 days and I have to tell my parents because this suspension means I can't go back to school for 2 days. There's no way I'd be able to skip 2 days of school without them finding out. I cut my losses and I come home with my suspension slip. I hand it over to my parents and await my sentence. There's a disappointment in my dad's eyes and I've really screwed up. Keep in mind, this is the first time they found out this kid is not as good as they thought. As I prepare for more reactions, I notice that my mom has her thinking face on. Nothing good ever comes out of that, and I'm beginning to grow a little mild case of anxiety. She snaps out and then she says, "Hey, this is your first offense though. Why would they be so hard on you?" I'm gonna call them. What do I do in this situation? The answer is nothing. I quickly walk to my room and think of my options and possibilities. I'm 10 years old, and this brainstorm session ended pretty quickly. I take a moment to look out the door as I have a clear view of the living room where my mom was sitting and talking on the phone. I cannot hear what she's saying, but what I can see in the next couple of seconds was my mom turning towards me and giving me what I can only define as the Death Star death stare. The stare down she gave me brought chills through my entire body. I knew right away I was caught. I was caught and I was paralyzed. I never got in trouble at school again. Some would say I learned my lesson, and the answer would be yes. I learned not to get in trouble in order to not have to lie to my parents, in order to not get caught, because all of that meant catching a serious beating. I believe I remember my mom saying that my kids will feel this beating one day. If that's really the case, then I'm sorry, Ollie.